Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Today is our special guest day, where we will hear from a friend of the ministry who will share their insight and stories on truth in this chaotic world. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, welcome, Kathy and David and Melissa Dunkel. Today is guest day, and so we're really excited to have our guest, Dave. Dave and I have been really great friends, good friends, great best friends since almost, 12, 13 years now, right? Maybe longer?
Probably longer than you would like it to be.
That's right.
Since you once said that you'd never take another call from the 813 area code.
Don't take calls from area code 813. We'll have another session on that, Dave, on that time of your life, and that was fun. But Dave's the CEO of K-Force, which is a $1 billion plus publicly traded company, and lives in Tampa, Florida, with his wife Melissa. They're leaders in living water, so they give it away and share the truth with others, as we've talked about abiding in the Holy Spirit. And so we're really excited to have you there. And so maybe you could start with each of you share a little bit about how each of you came to know Jesus in your walk with God through your life. How did you come to know Christ?
Would you like to go first, honey, or would you like me to go first?
You go for it.
Okay. Well, I like to say I was born and raised Catholic, but I now know that you're not born to be Catholic, even though the Pope would like you to believe that. But I was raised Catholic with a very devout father, and was actually an altar boy. And there is evidence of that. We have pictures of me in my altar boy outfit. And so was raised.
So Dave, one thing, Dave, how effective were you as an altar boy?
Well, things were going really well until we opened up the new church.
Yeah.
And it was a high mass, and I was the only altar boy that night. And the high mass meant that you used incense. And so my dad was in the front row, and I was kneeling on the new carpet in the beautiful new church. And I was getting a little bored, so I started rolling the incense around and kind of playing with it, and it fell over. And the incense fell out of the urn and lands on the carpet and starts burning. And I'm trying to figure out how to pick this thing up with my hand. And the priest turns around, looks, because he smells the carpet burning. It was so funny. I went in the back, got a spoon, picked it up, put it back in the urn, turned around, and I'm looking, and my father's sitting in the front row like this. It was so funny. And needless to say, the ride home was a little bit more strained than it might have been otherwise, because I was a bit of an embarrassment to him. But excuse me, it was one of the funny times of being an altar boy. But the cool thing was that even as a Catholic, I really did know a lot about God, and had a belief in God.
Yep.
And even as a young child, I knew that God was real. What I didn't know was that God wanted a relationship. And it wasn't until years later, when it was probably in my early 20s, that I started to pursue that and decided that I was going to do something really interesting. I was going to read a King James Bible from start to finish. I was assigned to the city of Boston audit, and I was going to spend 6 months riding back and forth from the suburbs to downtown on a bus.
Yeah.
So I started reading the King James Bible. I don't have to tell you what happened when I got to Leviticus. I dozed off a few times. And then when I finally got all the way to the end and I got to Revelation, I knew that it was true. And I said, this is true. I believe this. And so that kind of started me on a journey of trying to learn more and more. And I had a young staff accountant that worked for me at PwC, who was a young Baptist who witnessed to me as well. But I didn't really learn about surrender until probably when I went to a Promise Keepers event and then joined C12 back in the mid 90s. And that was, it was a big transformation for me because I went from believing in God to having a relationship with God to surrendering my life to God and to really be in a true relationship with Christ. And it was at that point that things really started to change for me. And I started experiencing supernatural things in my life. This was during a very difficult time as well. And we were taking the company public. We were having significant personal issues. But my faith walk really was, let's put it this way, they would have to add another chapter to the prodigal son to really address my faith walk. But praise God, he never gave up on me. And my walk over the last 15 to 20 years has been just fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you could share, by the way, Kathy and I have talked a lot about the beautiful love of God. That whenever his children say, you know, whoops, I'd like to come back and re-engage with you, he just says, hey, welcome back. Let's celebrate, you know. So I know that's happened in your life as well. Yeah, Melissa, tell us about your life.
Well, so I guess like Dave, I was raised Catholic, and you always kind of have that, respect, reverence for God and the church and Jesus and all of that. But he didn't really become a huge part of my life until, Jesus brought the rain a few times. Back 30 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed with cancer. And, as they say, I just grew much closer to him in the valley, made promises that, I'm still trying to keep. And, and then of course, life goes on and, you kind of lighten up a little bit. And, but through my whole adult life since then, God has directed my steps. And it's so easy to see now when I look back, the people he brought in my life and the way that, they sort of led me down this path. And I guess it was probably 10 years ago, I was actually engaged to just really the love of my life. This amazing man who's a Christian and just perfect. And he died. And, that in itself, I like to just say, God like got out a 2x4 and he said, hey, I'm here. And I was in the valley. And while I was in the valley, so many things happened that were so real that I have no doubt that it was God's hands like all around me. I remember walking through Publix here and feelings like if I went and bought a lotto ticket, I would probably win, which is a really random thing to say when you're so in such a dark place, but you feel the hand of God all over you. And even so much that that I had a couple interactions with some very dark things that one night literally there was this dark force over my bed and I just grabbed this cross and started to pray. And like I feel like the devil did not like what was happening and that God was just there. He was present and my life just changed forever after that. It actually began my journey to Dave, which the details of the story are just incredible, but that's kind of the really short version.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. Oh, maybe you guys could share about that. How tell us about how you met and what led you guys to get married. I think you're in your second year of marriage, right?
Yeah, we're in year and a half of getting married. It was January 11th, 2020. It was a pre-pandemic wedding. So God actually had us prepared for the pandemic, because to have not been married, being the pandemic, would have been a real problem, because I would have been sitting here by myself and Melissa would have been home. So we would have figured out a way. We would have even gone to a service with a mask on to get married during that time. But so we I went through a horrific divorce back in the late 2000s. And was basically of the opinion that I was going to spend the rest of my life single. And, Rich, you walked that out with me. And I really had a great life. Was doing a lot of ministry, and my walk with the Lord just got deeper and deeper, and just had a great life. And he led me to the home that we're living in today through a series of events. I was at a C12 meeting, and one of the people said to me, "You know, Dave, God wants you to have an abundant life too." And you're always giving to everybody else, but he wants you to have one. And I was home, and God said to me, he said, "Son, did you hear that?" And I was kind of like, what? I didn't know how to respond to it. And so I was praying, and he led me to Isaiah 43, 18 and 19, and which is, "Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old, for behold, I will do a new thing, and now it shall spring forth, and will you not know it? I will even do rivers in the desert and roads in the wilderness." And so I didn't know what to make of it. And, Rich, you walked out the whole moving to this home, and how God gave me a vision of being on the water. And I sent you a list of 5 houses, and God said, "It's this one." And you said, "It's this one." And
Yeah.
I'm in it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You were renting. Remember, you were renting at the time.
Yeah, I was renting and was quite content. And so I'm sitting downstairs, and I was at the table doing my devotional quiet time and just praising God for this beautiful home and being on the water. And I look up, and there's this 6-foot heart hanging from a tree. And I'm like, huh? God says, "Look up." And he said, basically, "She's coming." And I'm like, huh? What?
And you thought it was a hurricane.
I was thinking, well, this
sometimes it kind of is.
Yeah.
Maybe a mermaid or something.
Yeah.
So then, I was sitting there, and I was back in my C12 group, and they said, "Well, you're probably going to meet somebody on your road and your journey and your faith walk." And they said, "Have you ever prayed and asked God?" And I said, I haven't. So I was sitting out on the dock looking out over the water, and I decided I was just going to do my wife prayer. And my wife prayer, just kind of summary, was, "Lord, I confess that I've made my own choices in the past, and I've made my own mistakes. And if you want me to get married again, you're going to have to bring Eve to me this time. I'm not going to go out and do it out of myself. And I'm happy, but if you want me to get married again, then bring her to me, please. But I do confess that I have some certain desires. And I would like somebody who is a blonde and attractive and likes dogs and likes to be in the mountains." And I didn't have my glasses on, and I typed in my phone or my prayer, "Someone who likes to be in the water." And I meant to type "on the water." And so, because I like to go fishing and so forth. And so that was my wife's prayer. And every once in a while, I'd pull it out. And 6 months, a year, nothing really happening. And I was quite okay. And you'll recall when we went to Prague that God showed me, he said, "Son, you haven't been trusting me at all." He said, "You've been closed." And he said, "You need to trust me, and you need to open up." And I'm kind of scared about it. And, I guess really I haven't been trusting you. So I came back and mentioned to our pastor, I said, God's shown me that I've been closed, and that I really need to be open to it. And she said, "Okay." And
Well, that trip, Dave, it was not only open to it, but you really had God move you to, actually, I really would enjoy this now, because you were like, well, whatever, you're surrendered, but God said, you gotta now be willing, and do you have a heart to do it? And that really flipped for you, that yes, you did have a heart to do that.
Yeah, when I got back on the plane and was coming back, I kind of knew, it's like, yeah, okay, I would like to find somebody to share life with and do life with. And be kind of nice if, Father, if you could give me the little request list that I got over here.
Yeah, remember this list I have for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go about a few weeks after I had mentioned it to our pastor, because I'm on the steering committee, and she said, "Would you be interested in meeting somebody?" And I'm like, "Oh no, what's happening?"
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And so the pastor then happened to be Melissa, of course, and goes to Melissa's store. And what was the comment she said to you?
she said, would you like to meet someone?
And you said,
I said, oh, I don't remember.
you said who?
Yeah, who? And, I think she said, when you roll young, you roll young.
You asked how old I was or
that's
something.
right, yeah.
And she says, he rolls young. And so she was, so Kathy says to me, okay, would you like to meet her? So I said, sure. And I was traveling at the time. And I said, so I sent Melissa a text and, said, would you be interested in getting together? And she said, sure. And so we arranged on, was it August 18th?
Yes.
Go boy.
Very good.
Good job, Dave.
To meet at a Seasons 52. And so I said, okay, great. I play in the praise band, so I'll meet you at noon at season 52. So we sat down, and about 4 hours later, in what seemed like 10 minutes, I just sat there. I was like, wow. So I looked at Melissa with my great closing line, like, gee, this has been the greatest thing ever. I just looked at her, I said, well, now what? And so I was like, I've never really thought that this was going to happen. And I haven't really gone on any second dates. And would you like to get together again? So long story short, I got home and I was going through my little list of things. And as it turned out, God was like, hey, how did I do? Because everything on my list he had, including while we were sitting at lunch, I was sharing with Melissa that I dive. And she said, well, I grew up in the Keys and my dad owned a dive shop. And I'm like, in the water. So God actually found somebody and brought her to me, somebody who actually is a diver. And so, I mean, it's really, you think about all the odds of finding all of the other things and then a diver on top of it. So God's like, hey, how did I do?
I love it. I tell you, from an outside perspective, as a friend of Dave, I've only known Melissa for a little while now, maybe a year or so. But as from an outside perspective, it has been so beautiful to watch, because Dave is probably one of the most generous-hearted people that Rich and I both have the privilege of knowing, and to watch him pour in and give to others so often, and then to see God just deliver up on a gold platter everything that blessed him so perfectly. We have all watched, we've all loved being an audience to that and getting to see God just turn that on Dave and really bless him with you, Melissa. So,
oh, well, he's been a blessing to me equally. So but yeah, so my side of the story, I guess, is right after, when I was in that really dark place after having lost someone, a really good friend of mine that I'd known for years, he and his wife invited me to go to First Pres, the church that Dave went to. So the reality was we were going to the same church for several years. I sat under the balcony and he sat in the balcony. And, had it not been for the pastor, like connecting the dots, finally, we probably never would have met. And yeah, so God did pretty good. I'm a bit of a flatlander, though. I'm learning to love the mountains. Growing up on an island, there's, one road, it goes north and south and it's flat. So that's a bit of an adjustment, but it's great. It's wonderful.
So after you met and spent some time, what led you to get married?
Well, on the second date, I think we were sitting chatting, and he says, so I'm hosting a marriage retreat at my home in New Hampshire. Would you like to go? I was like, let me check my calendar, which is code for I need to call my girlfriends and just see about this, And anyway, long story short, I went, and that was quite interesting, but it was all good. It was fun. It's a great, laughing point.
Yeah, it was the abiding retreat. And I shared with Rich and our other friend, Tom Ewing. I said, well, I met this girl and she seems really nice. And so Rich says, well, invite her to the abiding retreat. I'm like, what? I've been seeing her for 4 weeks. I'm going to invite her to the abiding retreat. He goes, sure. He goes, she can get a chance to
sink or swim,
to see, what your life's like and walk with God and learn about abiding. And I said, well, I don't know about that. I better, if Tom says so too, then I'll do it. So I'm on the phone with Tom. I said, so let me tell you what Rich said to me. He goes, oh, that'd be a great idea. You should do that. And I'm like,
I love
I was
it.
hoping you'd talk me out of it. So we ended up going to the retreat, and as God knew, it was just fantastic. We just had a chance to spend time together in the Word, and learn about it together. And I got to share it with somebody, and it was so cool, just being up there and listening to the crickets down at the garden. That became one of our little places to go. And there was a song that Pat Barrett did called "Canvas and Clay."
Yeah.
That just became our theme song at that point. And it was very clear that this was the person. I mean, God lined up every single thing on my list, and I'm like, well, I guess is the person. So I said to Rich, I said, well, how do you know? He says, well, because God said so, and it happens. And I'm like, well, I said, it's not time driven, huh? He goes, nope. And I said, okay, well, I think this is the one.
Wow.
So I did a couple of trial closes, but she wasn't buying.
Yeah, no, what really closed the deal, he doesn't probably know it is, we're standing there getting ready to start worship. And as you guys know, Dave plays guitar. He starts playing Sweet Melissa by the Allman Brothers. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
All right.
Tom coached him on that one, but
No, that was all me. Tom
was,
Ewing is not getting credit for that one.
Yeah.
That was entirely me. But
That's great.
we had one of the couples in the church, an elderly couple, said to Melissa like 2 Sundays ago, I'm so glad that you're seeing Dave. You guys are just perfect together. I'm so glad that you guys are dating. And Melissa says, we're married.
with COVID, there's just this gap in time, and people just don't
That's
know.
right. Yeah. We got married. Now we're dating.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to kind of conclude that part of the story, I can say it's been 1.5 years already, which is remarkable in and of itself. And it has been better than I ever could have expected. I so look forward to her coming home every day, because I'm working half in the office and half at home. And so to have Melissa come home every day, I mean, just the joy that we have together, we laugh, we've been through COVID together, we've been through all kinds of stuff. And so, as you say, Rich, doing life together has just been fantastic. I mean, we've been through all kinds of stuff, and just being able to share. And every night when we go to sleep, I hold her hand because I can now.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you think about it, really, we knew each other, like 5 months before I mean, there was it could have been a huge disaster, but it's just been blessed. The whole thing has been blessed. And
I love that. Even at the foundation, you said 4 weeks in, you take her to an abiding retreat. But what better place to start a relationship than to hear about what it's like to center it on God and to come to unity? There's no mistake in that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we were sitting together on the couch, and her knee touched my knee while we were over there, and I'm like, uh-oh. And Tom's looking at me going, you got this beautiful blonde girl sitting next to you, dude. You got to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of singles, as you guys experienced. They're always, particularly today, they tend to overanalyze it all. And they try to determine it, in their first date. Is this going to be my spouse or not? And what we try to tell them is, when it relax, if you enjoyed being together, just keep being together. And then you discover that, well, we like the same things like you guys do, obviously. You learn that, hey, we can process through stuff in unity, and there's issues how to do that. And then third, which is the most important, is do you have a heart for God?
Right.
And if you both have a heart for God, you like the same things, and you can learn how to walk through unity, God's going to say yes. And like Dave said, you don't have a timeline to it. It's just, oh, okay, well, we see that, then let's go. And that's how beautiful it is. So you guys are a great representation of that.
So it's a reminder that even late in life, that God can do a supernatural thing. And, it's something that caught me by surprise. I didn't expect it. I kind of thought I was going to finish the race alone, but praise God, I'm not. I get to do it with my girl.
That's right. Amen to that. So tell us, Dave, you can start this. Tell us about, Kathy and I have been sharing over the last couple of months about abiding, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Holy Spirit. But how did you understand this and share about your experience with abiding and what it's meant to you in your life? And then the two of you could talk about how you process unity using that understanding of walking together.
Well, full disclosure to all those watching, Rich was my discipler for Spiritual Leadership Institute. And so he concluded after several weeks that I was the slowest pupil that he was ever going to get on learning abiding. And so I was going through the scriptures and just processing and journaling. And Rich each week would say, "How you going? How's it going?" "I'm not getting it." "Well, how's it going?" "I'm not getting it." And I was getting more and more and more frustrated. And I was reading the word and I was trying to get it and I was trying to get it. And it was several months actually. So that is the evidence that I was the dimwit in the class. But there is hope for the hopeless. And so one day, all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. And I realized it wasn't something that I get. It was something that I receive.
Yeah.
And I receive out of relationship. And God just kind of broke through my thick skull and showed me that it's actually just relax and receive it. It's out of relationship and out of spending time with me and spending time in the Word. And so once that happened, there was just no turning back. It was just the floodgates opened. And the Word came alive. Even though I certainly was in the Word and I understood the Word just came alive in a whole new way. And the Spirit just kept taking me deeper and deeper and deeper. And it became almost an insatiable desire for me to keep going. And I mean, I poured through everything that I went through every Living Waters teaching there was many times over. I went through WAMAC stuff and I was just eating it all up. And God was just speaking to me. And in that journey, I would say that I learned a lot about just walking it out and being led by the Spirit and building a library of verses, if you will, and letting the Lord lead me to what it is that He has to say. And it's an all the time, every day thing for me now.
Yeah.
To be sensitive to the voice of the Spirit in me. And so even though it took me a long time to figure it out, if you will, God was endlessly patient. And it was just for me, a hard thing to understand. I just needed to receive it.
Yeah. And as you were starting that, what was the one good thing that you did as we said, here's abiding, this is important. Yeah, you took a few, a month or two, but there is one good thing that you did. What did you do and why did you do it?
I just stayed with it.
Yeah.
I just kept going.
That's good.
Because I wanted it. I wanted it. I could see it. And I saw it in other people and I really, really wanted it. And I could sense, I just knew that there was more.
Yeah.
And I needed and wanted more. And thank you for your patience, your endless patience to help me get connected. But boy, once I got connected to the vine, it was life.
Yeah, it was life. Now, and one more question, Kathy, then ask that again. As you experienced that, and now you had life, you understood life, you understood the relationship and the wonder of that. Have you ever not done that?
I can't.
Okay.
I couldn't not do it.
Yeah, explain that a little bit for all of us, because it's people have a hard time understanding. Well, what do you mean you can't not do it? Well, that's what happens. So what happened to you? How did that go?
Well, it really comes down to a heart level love relationship with God.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to share with my Father. Every morning I'm up and I'm journaling and sharing with the Father what happened the previous day and praising Him for what He showed me and asking Him questions and dealing with issues. And it's just I get to go sit with my Father. And it's a daddy father. It's not the father that I thought he was when I was raised Catholic. It was a daddy father, and he wasn't sitting there like this, he was sitting there like this.
Yeah.
And so once I learned that, and I know that there's different levels of people in the way that they spend time in the Word, but what I learned is that never gets turned off. And Jesus was never separated from his Father, and I'm never separated from my Father. I have times that I'm spending more time in the Word and times that I'm more focused on specific issues, but I'm with him all the time.
Yeah.
And the Father's prompting me all the time, always with questions, with issues, and did you see that, and pointing things out. And it's just an awesome walk with the Spirit. And I can't not do it because it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I did. Because you shared a little bit, you've shared a lot about your heart and how this has impacted your heart, and shared how it has impacted yours and Melissa's life. But when you finally got this, when it got through to you, when God got through to you on this, how did that impact your business? You've been a successful businessman for a long time, but I know just from stories that I've heard, it has had a huge impact on your business as well as on your employees and those that you lead and all of that. Can you share a little bit of that as well?
Yeah, if you could find my high school yearbook, there would have been an award, least likely to succeed, and it would have had my picture on it. I was nobody from nowhere, and just a C student in high school in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And God knew something else. He knew what he could do with somebody whose heart was wholly his. And so as I learned to abide, and I learned to ask God for wisdom, and I learned to let him lead, I found that it actually applies to every aspect of my life. And so through all of the challenges that we've had in our business with changes in market conditions, and from 2008 financial crisis, and all these things that God has led, given us wisdom, and actually cares about our business. And probably the most important thing that I learned is that the business is a vehicle to the people. And while we all make stuff and do stuff, it really comes down to the people that are in the business that God's really concerned about. So as a C12 member, I brought in corporate chaplains, and we have Bible studies going on, and have just seen a number of people come to Christ. We have daily prayer time now with our people over Teams, and we've seen supernatural healings and all kinds of stuff. And it was just through a simple step of obedience of saying, well, okay, well, if this is what you would have me do, then I will do it. And I will bring in my faith into the market and into our business. And God brought people around us, and it's really been remarkable to see, the people that he's brought, and the supernatural stuff that's happened.
Melissa, how's your abiding time been? How's that been going for you?
Well, admittedly, it's a bit of a work in progress. I've had a lot of change in my life in the last couple of years. And, Dave's a great coach and very patient with me. And so, I think on my own time, on God's time, it'll all kind of fall into place. But it's, like I said, still working on it.
Yeah, beautiful. As you two, now have been married, one thing that Kathy and I have talked about is the role of the Holy Spirit in decision making, wisdom, informing, checking, what we call checking, giving you peace about things. So, if you can, describe how that's worked in your marriage, and even give us some examples of what you have understood about the work of the Holy Spirit in this relationship, as well as a couple coming to unity in decision making.
Yeah, we've one thing that we've done is, which actually was a result of some of your coaching, was we have a regularly scheduled time that we spend each week and process through what God's saying to us and issues that we may have, and just sharing time together to make sure that it's focused time for us. And one of the things that happened in that process was Melissa actually started doing Experiencing God, which was a book that I did years ago.
Yep.
And so she actually liked Henry Blackaby so much, she got on the YouTube video and started watching Henry. And this really cool thing happened. I'm going to let Melissa tell the story because it was just an example of God speaking and showing us how he brought us to a place of, I want to use you guys and I want to show you how this works. You want to share the story?
Yeah, so I had just come home from work, and one of my employees was just, she has a lot of faith, and she was struggling, and she's actually living in her car, which she never told anyone. It just happened that I parked next to her one day and realized, like, put it all together, like what was going on. And I was just mortified. And she had had an eviction on her record, and so she couldn't get, an apartment or whatever. And so I came home just worried, like, as a woman, as her boss, as a friend, all of those things, like, what do I do? And I looked at him, and
I looked at her, I said, so where are you in experiencing God right now? And she said, well, when you see the activity of God, that's his invitation to join him. And I said, so when you see the activity of God, that's his invitation to join him. And Melissa goes, I was afraid of that. But it was so cool because she immediately saw that God was inviting her to come alongside. And so we were processing through it and talking about it. And, what would you have us do? And we both felt clearly that the Spirit was saying that we needed to step in to help this person. And she'd been through some tough stuff, abuse and things like that. And she's living in her car. And I'm like, we can't, God's brought us to her side for this reason at this time. So Melissa called her up and said, we believe that God's asking us to come alongside you and help you. And I mean, just watching Melissa make the phone call and come out, and the person, and I'll let you tell the story.
well, we just got her in a hotel immediately until we could try and figure out this lease thing. And, we ended up just, signing a lease for her and give her a little time, a year of the lease to get her, self squared away and whatnot. So just kind of reached out.
And then what was her comment? What was her mother's comment to you?
Oh, they were just so grateful. And, she really hadn't asked for help from anyone. She was just dealing with it. And she would come in early. She had a key to the store. And I, when I was putting this together, I, looked the next morning, and she's back there, she's brushing her teeth. And I think she was showering at the gym, and she's reading her Bible. They're eating breakfast in the back room. And showering
at the club and whatnot. And she made a statement. She said, well, God brought you into my life at such a time as this, and I pray for you all the time. I mean, it was just this cool God story, and how God used Henry's God seeing his activity, and was his invitation to join him, and how that led us to a place of experiencing that together.
Right.
Which is a little bit of, my delay on the whole abiding thing. Like, I've got Henry Blackaby over here, I've got Dave. So I'm just trying to get my arms around all of it and kind of put it in a nice package that, works for me and for us and who I am and that sort of thing. So, but it's all good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's cool how, God takes real stuff as you're learning it. He says, here, let me have you understand it by experiencing it, not just learn about it. Right. So you got to experience that directly. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. We were going through, I think it was 1 John 3:16, where he says, if any of you have the world's goods and see a brother in need, how can the love of God be in you if you don't help him? And so, we talked about it and said, this is God's invitation to do that. And so it's fun, because as Melissa said, we came from two different places, and, I did Spiritual Leadership Institute and doing this stuff. And so, as we've walked this together, God's kind of brought us together with experiences and examples and verses and things like that. And so, it was one thing I had to appreciate was that, I was coming from a completely different place, and Melissa was coming from a completely different place. And, but God has found a way to bring us together, just to walk it out, to share it. And for me personally, it's been great having a woman's perspective because she's much more, she's a gentle, loving spirit. And I'm the hard driving CEO type, and I need the gentle, loving spirit who can look at me and say, honey, no, and balance me out. And that's when you really know when God says that they're no longer two but one flesh,
Right.
and that we're completing each other in the process. That's been great.
Yep. And as an executive, Dave, maybe you could share briefly, as a CEO, you've had a few what I call sticky wickets, cultural issues that were not obvious for the way that you function and your faith, and was a challenge because you have to set policy. So you don't have to go into all the detail of it, but share about the experience of it, of how you got led to God's answer.
Yeah, we've had a number of challenges over the years. Obviously, the cultural issue, the Supreme Court ruling and striking down DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, and things like that. And so there is a conflict inherent in the culture and the law that comes between my faith and belief and the culture, faith and belief, and my responsibilities. And so it's a real challenge at times, but I made a decision a long time ago based on Acts where Peter and John said, it seems to us that we should obey God and not men. And that became my anchor. And from there, what I've done is ask for wisdom from God to help navigate the very difficult circumstances like that. And so we have a responsibility to give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. And so remarkably on the journey, God's given us wisdom to do it. He's said, well, here's one way that you can handle that. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even thought about that. And our team came together, and it was an elegant solution where we can honor God, honor the law, and still do what we needed to do for the people. And he's done that all the way through this. He's given us this kind of a supernatural wisdom and the willingness to be patient and wait for him has been key to the whole thing. Because the cultural dynamics are really, really challenging and continue to be.
Yeah, and as you look at that, describe some of the specifics, not the detail of it, but how did you get your answer? What did you do to receive the answer, and how did it play out? Because it wasn't just, yeah, we got a problem, give us the answer. There's more to it than that.
Well, I started out by journaling it out and saying, Father, I got a problem. I got this problem over here, and I know you have the answer. And I'm prepared to follow whatever it is that you tell me. And so I started going through the verses and finding the relevant verses. And some of them he brought to mind as I was going through it. I mentioned Acts was one, and others, and given to Caesar what is Caesar. So I started saying, well, how do I apply that? How does that work? And so journaling it out. And as I was doing that, I would process that. In fact, you and I spoke about it. One of our other executives and I spoke about it. And I said, well, this is what I'm sensing. And we finally got to a place where I felt like God saying, this is your answer. This is what you need to do. So I brought it to our general counsel at the time, brought it to the outside counsel, brought it to our president, and they said, yeah, that'll work. And it was over a period of several weeks.
Yeah.
And God's not ignorant of the timing. I mean, he knows. We sometimes think, God, I need an answer today. And so he knows what the timing is, and we just had to be patient enough for him to give us the answer. And I think sometimes we don't give God enough credit that he understands everything, including timing, including the nuances, including everything. And we just need to put it before him and trust him with the outcome. And not easier said than done. But nevertheless, he has directed our paths, and thus far we have navigated successfully the challenges of the culture.
Yeah, and those you described it. It said it took 2 or 3 weeks. What was that 2 or 3 weeks like for you? What did that look like? So people again can understand what are you talking about? It took 2 or 3 weeks, and how did that look?
Well, every day I would be praying, asking for wisdom, going through the verses, journaling it out, following cross references, looking at key words, key verses, stories in scripture about how they applied it. I mentioned Peter and John, they were called before the Pharisees and were given a specific instruction: do not do this.
Mhm.
And they said, well, it seems to us that we should obey God and not man. And so God said, that's one of the fundamental choices you have to make. Are you going to obey me, or are you going to obey man?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that was after several days of processing. And so my journal was, well, I'm going to obey you, and I'm willing to take the consequence, whatever it is. And so God says, okay, so now let's go to the next step. And so that would lead to something else. And then as I would process that out, I would read an article, or I'd have a conversation with somebody and say, well, what do you think about this? Or how could we handle this? And so I got bit by bit by bit
Yeah.
wisdom until
Yeah.
we finally got to the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, what you're describing there is similar to what Melissa's learning and the experience in God.
Yeah.
That God will speak through all different circumstances and people around you, as well as your time in the Word, and
Yeah.
bring it all together. And so I love
That's right.
that she's in that learning, and you're just describing that process perfectly as well.
Yeah, and Melissa, I know that you've been a businesswoman and have a business, and God has led you to sell it. Describe that. How did that come about, and how did you understand that to be God's will?
Well, it took a little while, but we talked about using a broker, and then it just evolved that one of my employees actually wanted to buy it, and just like all sort of fell into place. And it's not done yet, but God willing, will be. So we're just trying to get over every hurdle that's thrown up. And
Yeah, I think the question that we had to ask was God's will to sell it?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And one of the things that I wanted to be very respectful of was to never say, honey, I think you should sell the business.
Good choice, Dave.
In fact,
Smart man.
she once said, why would he be interested in me? I work every Saturday. I work 6 days a week.
That's what I said when Kathy asked me if I wanted to meet him.
And I said, look, I understand. That's okay. I trusted that God would get her to the answer. And if that was the answer, maybe it wasn't, because I know that she enjoyed doing what she was doing, and that's okay. I didn't want to be someone who said, you need to do this. I wanted to just wait. And as we started to experience more of life together, we did the retreats, and I said, boy, I'd love to really do the monthly retreats at the ranch and do more things, more of the living waters retreats and whatnot. And she said, well, I've got this problem over here. And she said, I really think it's time. I'm ready to let it go. And then we talked about a broker, and talked about it even right after COVID, wasn't it? I think, yeah. And then timing just wasn't right. And we said, well, God's got the answer. We're just going to wait. And Rich, I think you mentioned it. You said, what about one of her employees? And I said, well, nobody was really interested. And then shortly thereafter, one of the people came forward.
Yeah, and it's not like I asked, because obviously it's very private, but I just randomly heard her kind of mentioning that she would at some point, like to buy a store like ours. Yeah.
Just random.
Well, how about this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, well, buy this one. I'm good with that. So,
Oh, that's cool.
That's great.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, it's very exciting to have you guys on, and just to have you share, the truth of your walk with God, both of you, and the joy as you look forward. I guess you guys could end your time with us with why are you so excited for life and being together?
Oh, because
You have to answer first.
well, honestly, it just works. It's just fun. And we laugh, and we share the burdens, and we have each other's back, which is so simple, but so many couples don't.
Right.
And yeah, we genuinely care about each other, and what's best, and that sort of, there's not a jealousy or a competitiveness, and he's kind of competitive, but
you
shy a little bit. So yeah. So
Yeah, I think the joy of doing life with someone. I'm really excited. We did the retreat back in when was it? Back in February in the winter, yeah, with some of the folks that we brought together, and Melissa got to be the hostess with the mostest, and just loved doing it.
Yeah.
And so we're excited about being able to do that with having our time freed up some, and just doing the adventures. One thing we've discovered, which is I think probably something that God's raised up, is our time with the grandchildren.
Yeah.
And Melissa's granddaughter, and I've got 3 grandkids with one on the way, and we're spending a lot more time with them. And I don't know that was on our radar to begin with, but we really see it as an opportunity to help shape their lives, and we enjoy the time with them, and just being able to do something as simple as pray over a meal with them, and or have one of them lead the prayer over the meal, and just seeing that, and we're talking young, we're talking 5 and 3, and but seeing it, there's a lot of life left for us with the grandkids to help shape their lives, and even our kids to a degree. So we're excited about life. We're excited about the adventures ahead.
Yeah, we're excited for you. And being Linda and I have 5 grandkids, and there's nothing better than to enjoy pouring into them. I know you guys do. So, and Kathy, someday you'll have that.
Not yet, but someday.
Well, I saw your son and daughter-in-law at the airport, and I asked them. And,
oh, did
I'm
you?
not going to tell you what the answer was.
Yeah, I think they said they're waiting for a little while, right?
That's it. Well,
my money's on my middle son before my oldest. We'll see.
Dave being direct, he probably said, "Well, you got to get going. Come on, get going. Let's go."
It's not that complicated.
It's not that complicated. Well, we sure love having you guys on, and it's been quite exciting to have you share your life with God and how the Holy Spirit works with you and leads you. And we just wish you nothing but great times together, and it'll be fun as you give it away together. That'll be fun to be part of and see. So. We love having you on. Thank you so much for being on.
Good to see you guys
with
all.
You, Kathy and Rich, and
yeah.
being here with my wife is the best of all.
That's it.
Excellent.
But we're not allowed to kiss on TV.
So we'll look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. I do want to announce that on July the 9th, we're going to start our series on the overview of the end times and the remnant. We've Dave, and I'll share with that. Dave's been part of that with me to develop that understanding. So that'll be fun to do. And we'll probably have you back on, Dave.
Very timely, very
back on, Dave,
interesting,
during one of our sessions of that, and you can join in on insight that we've gotten, together, and you've gotten about that. But it'll be fun for everybody to start having it. We have guest day on Thursday, and we'll have end time day on Friday. So that'll be fun to start. So. Look forward to it.
In the pipeline.
Yep. Okay. Well, good to see you guys, and Kathy, we'll see you tomorrow.
Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.